So we've got Adrian from A&K Van Services here. He's taking our Citroen Picasso down to Cornwall for a customer who's bought it distance sale wise, which I don't like to do. Important thing with distance sale is make sure you put the distance sale paperwork in the car, get them to sign it so that they know what their rights are with the distance sale, because otherwise the law says that it's only from the moment you're given that information that your return rights start. It's back, and this is exactly why I hate doing distance sales. Adrian's chuckling to himself because he knows that I shouldn't be doing them and they always go wrong, and yet I've done another one. So we'll get it off the trailer and I'll explain to you what the score is, but I'm down another 150 quid now for getting it back from the guy. I absolutely, this is going to be the last distance sale I ever do. So we got the Citroen in. I've taken it for a test drive and only a short little run up the road, and it pulls fine until you want to accelerate hard, and then it kind of like lurches. It doesn't want to do anything. No codes on the dash and no limp mode, so it just kind of like jerks a bit. So we pulled it in and we're thinking first things first. Pete's code read it. And the code, what were you getting codes back for, Pete? You get codes back for fuel rail pressure, weren't you?
Fuel reserve.
Fuel reserve?
Yeah, it's like it's not getting enough pressure to the fuel rail.
Right, okay, not enough pressure to the fuel rail. So we did a bit of YouTubing, a bit of Googling and that kind of thing. Came back, apparently they're common for gummed up fuel rails. Now, first thing we're going to do, change the fuel filter out and make sure the fuel filter is nice and clear. But Pete's just poured out the fuel from the fuel filter, and it is a very, very brown colour. Look at that, very brown. It doesn't smell quite right. We're a little concerned he might have mixed fuels, but I don't know if he could have done, and if a diesel would run at all with a mix of diesel and petrol. I would have thought it would be too much compression and cause bigger issues than we're having. But it certainly doesn't smell right. Now we put fuel in it, but to be fair, it was sitting around well before Christmas, and we did not put a fuel filter in before. We didn't think to put a fuel filter in before. So what we'll do, put one in, and we're going to fill it full of a cleaner and put a cleaner in the tank as well, and then run the car for a bit, and then take it for another test drive. If that doesn't work, we're going to need to get the fuel rail off the back of the engine there somewhere, and get in and try and clean that out. But Pete's plugged it in and checked the fuel pressure from the fuel pump. The fuel pump is beautiful, loads of pressure, no problem there at all. So it's getting up this far, but then it's not getting enough fuel pressure to the engine. Obviously, when I'm trying to put my foot down and demanding more fuel, it's not got the pressure then. So at least the pump's good and it's getting that far. Maybe it just is that the fuel filter is really quite clogged up and nasty, and it's having this bigger difference. The trouble is, if the fuel rail is dirty, the fuel filter alone won't fix the problem, but it might do if we put the cleaner in and run it for a bit. So we'll see. So we'll do the simple thing first, and if necessary, then we'll get the fuel rail off the back and clean that out. Now the gentleman, I've refunded the gentleman because he wanted it like ASAP. I'm not entirely convinced we can fix it. If it goes down for somebody else to have a look at, it's going to be a week or so, and he's really piling the pressure on to get the car back. And I said, to be honest, it's just better if we refund you. Now that's cost me, because obviously I've refunded him the delivery that he paid to get the vehicle down to him, and I've paid for the vehicle to be picked up. £300 between those two things, over and above obviously what it's going to cost to fix it. So it is a big loss on this car. I was already selling it pretty much break even anyway, but obviously it's just a paperweight if we can't fix it and get it to run right. If we can get it run right, I just want to use it as our loan car, because we've sold our little Hyundai i10 loan car. So we'll use it for that. Probably a bit big, possibly a bit big as a loan car, but then some people complain the Hyundai i10 is too small. You can't please everyone. If we can offer them a car and they decide not to go for this car, then that's down to them, isn't it? Now, obviously, the problem with this being a distance sale is, had it been sold round the corner like 99% of our cars are, we'd have gone and picked it up and got it back here. We'd have saved that £300. That £300 would go a long way to resolving whatever the problem is. So the problem is when somebody decides to buy a car from distance, as a dealer, you take on the responsibility for the fact they made that decision. Sounds a bit harsh, but you do, don't you? Because if you've got to refund all the transport, the fact that they decided to buy from miles and miles and miles away from you becomes your problem, not their problem, because the car's faulty, which obviously they shouldn't be left out of pocket when you've sold them a car that's gone faulty. I understand that. Obviously, the age of cars the risk is that much higher, isn't it, that the car might develop an issue. If you're selling sort of 5-year-old stuff with low miles, the odds of someone having an issue is less. So distance selling probably makes sense. But all of my stuff, you know, they can have little teething problems. They're all at 100,000 miles, all 10 years old or more. Obviously, you know, you don't see the vast majority of them back. But when they do have issues, it's nice just for me to rock up here and we can get straight on it. I've said it before, and I broke my own rule doing a distance sale, but that is it. I am absolutely off with distance sales. If you want a car from me, you need to come down here. You need to look at it. You need to pick it up from here, which I know doesn't necessarily help if they still take it up out country. The issue with this one, again, was that a local garage didn't want to work on it because they didn't want to work under warranty, and they also didn't have time to do anything with it. So that was the other reason we needed to get this car back. So new fuel filter is in, Pete's running it up. We're going to put some cleaner in the tank as well, and then we'll probably let it sit here and run for a little bit, and then I'll take it for a run and see if there's any improvement. Basically, we've got to get all these cleaners through, and potentially, if it is the simple thing of it just being gunked up, they might be enough to clear it. Now the customer with this car, really grateful for the way I've treated him. He said your honesty's been brilliant and the way that you've dealt with it's been brilliant. His son was helping him find a car. His son was really grateful that I looked after Dad when there was an issue. I said, look, at the end of the day, I said the same thing as always. I said, you don't know how good a car dealer you're dealing with until you actually have a problem with the car. Anyone can sell you a car that develops no issues at all. It's what happens when the car does have an issue. That's when you know how good a car dealer you've got. I said, at the end of the day, I don't want to just cause anyone any inconvenience. Simplest thing is just to reverse the deal, put money back in Dad's bank, and then hopefully he can find a car, maybe a bit, if he's going to buy this age and this kind of miles, something a bit closer to home again, that someone can look after him just around the corner if he has an issue. So you can hear that the engine runs really sweetly. Idling is absolutely lovely, and like I say, it'll pull away and drive away fine. It's just when you give it the absolute, you know, when you give it some stronger beans, try and accelerate a bit harder, then it starts to jerk about a bit. We'll let it sit and run, and then we'll take it out and we'll see what the score is. Pete's busy upsetting all the neighbours, testing it now. It's the fuel filter's been put in. He seems to be able to rev the bits off it without having an issue, so I don't know what's going on there. See what he thinks. I might take it on the road. Of course, we're using Old Faithful Top Dons. Which one have you got there, Pete? You've got the Artidag Pro. He's got the Artidag Pro there, which is going to give him live data on the fuel rail pressure, live data on how the injectors are doing, all that kind of good stuff. That's how Pete worked out that we were getting enough fuel at the fuel rail using the Top Don and looking at live data. Just going to have a look and see if we've still got the same fault codes in there at all. So that's the one we've got there. We're going to clear it and see if it comes back or not.
Injectors, isn't it?
Right, the fault code is still there. Now we can hear a cracking in the engine bay as well, like the injectors are getting a bit of air in them. They're either over-fueling or either under-fueling, which under-fueling ties in what we've heard so far. So something's stopping the injectors getting the amount of fuel they should have. We've just got the top done there, can't you? I think the light's too bright. You might be able to see it. It's just top done, letting us look at the injectors there and seeing how they're performing. There's one slightly behind the others, not big enough to make a big difference. Right, we've got our MG3 in the unit. Now, if you remember, this one had a seized clutch outside. We couldn't move the darn things. We had to drag it in here, get it on the ramp. Peter's been at it and got the gearbox out. And we can show you exactly what the problem is with these MG3s. It's a very common problem. If you leave them sitting for any period at all, this bar that goes through into the gearbox here, so basically your slave cylinder pushes against that when you put your foot on the pedal and moves this bar back and forth. If you let the car sit, these bars here corrode and they get seized in their bushing. We were hitting this with a rubber hammer, of course, and it wasn't moving at all. So it's had to be taken out, and Pete has cleaned it all up and greased it all up, so now it's completely freely moving. Now obviously, while this is out, we'll put a brand new clutch in the car. Might as well, because we've done the job of getting the gearbox out. So that's obviously down there. So we've got a new clutch on the way. But don't let your MG3 sit around for too long, because this can happen. It's a relatively easy fix because the gearbox comes out really nicely. There's loads of room in the engine bay on these. There's no subframe blocking the gearbox from being dropped out. They're small and light to lift in and out as well, so there's no big problems there. But yeah, we left ours sitting from I think 21st, well no, earlier than that, about, I think we got it at the beginning of December. We let it sit around and came back to it when we came back in January, and that was enough for it to be completely seized on, because we drove it in the spot, no problems at all. Anyway, clutch in, gearbox back in, got some paintwork to do on the car, and then we'll be able to get it for sale and obviously say it's got a brand new clutch in it. So here is the hole in the side of the engine on the Mercedes. So if you remember the Mercedes, so we bought it down, what did we bring it down for? Bought it down for poor performance because the turbo was bad. Guys put a new turbo on, they did drop the sump off, clean it all out. You can see the new sealant is there from when they did it. So they did do that, they did flush everything out, did 2 engine flushes, put the new turbo on, put new turbo pipes on as well, so I didn't use the old turbo pipes. But on test drive, after fitting the new turbo, it went bang and punched that lovely great hole in the engine, which is why we've got a replacement engine in here ready to go at a cost of, well, £2,000 for the engine, God knows how much for fitting. So of course, yet another example of how dealers just wash cars, put thousands of pounds on them and make a fortune. Bit of playtime on the MGB today. Supercharged MX-5. Just about to go for a test drive after rerouting the belt and check out its latest tune. We're hoping for about 160 horsepower, we're hoping for.